Welcome down to my 9-foot homemade oak bar. Pour yourself a cold one. You are listening to Bucs in the Basement. My name's Chris, and Craig here is the biggest Pirates fan you'll ever meet. Let's talk Pirates baseball now. Welcome to Bucs in the Basement.
Now I see the changes in this town. They change, they say one thing, but then the next day it's different. They change, but they don't know what they want. All they do is change. Going left, going right, travel day, travel night. That's where we'll go. There's no excuses, no goodbyes. No one cries, no one lies. We'll never know. If
Every episode of Bucs in the Basement brought to you proudly by Shopyins.com. It's one brand for three different dynasties. It is the brand for Pittsburgh sports. Why have to go out and buy anything else again? You could just have a big giant Y on your shirt, on your hat. You know, you get to wear it to all the different sporting events. It's all that Craig does. He wears his big Y hat and he's got his Yins gear and he's killing it. Free shipping on orders $75 or more. Check it out right now. There's a link in the show notes. There's a link at bucksinthebasement.com, or you can just type in shopyins.com. My friend Bryan Reynolds and the Pittsburgh Pirates making news during the winter meetings, not in the best way, but it's not as bleak as I think people kind of like reacted to it. Like you know, they still have him for 3 years. If he doesn't want to sign an extension right now, that doesn't mean you have to trade him.
No, and I think you saw like the Twitter interactions that I had with everybody as soon as it happened. I had basically taken a nap and I woke up and my instant reaction was, oh my God, I need a drink. Just because, I mean, it's never good. The Pirates are never in the news other than when O'Neal Cruz hits a ball or throws a ball faster than any other human. The Pirates aren't in the news for anything good. So it was just like, man, do I got to deal with this today? And I knew what people's reactions were going to be. People went out and did podcasts calling sell the team. And he's leaving because they've only had him on, you know, these 200 lost teams. And, you know, I would want out too. And all this stuff. And it's all this noise. But then, Chris, we've actually had a couple days to think about this, to process this. And to, at times, you know, take the fan cap off, take my Y fan cap off, and put on the actual baseball hat and say, you know, what does this mean for Bryan Reynolds? What does this mean for the team? Well, on our site, Inside the Bucs Basement, Gary, who is, you know, he writes very well for us, writes all the time, writes a heck of a lot more than I do, but he, you know, kind of waited till the smoke died down a little bit and was basically saying that, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of money difference in there, but more of this is about the term.
He had a source. Did he give up the source? Because I don't want to give up his source. I know what it is because you told me what it is, but he had a pretty good source.
He had a pretty good source, absolutely.
This was about term. I mean, he got this thing from a very close source. And if he didn't give it in the article, because I didn't read the article you and I were talking about before we started talking, I'll stand by it if that's true, where he got that from. It was term, and it wasn't money. And if it was term and it wasn't money, then what you have to remember is, first off, the Pirates have him for 3 years. You still got his year 28, his year 29, his year 30 season, where you control him. And so you don't need to move him. Why would you? If I were Ben Cherington, I'd just shrug and be like, all right, fine, play for us. If you play terribly, you'll never make any money when you finally leave. If you play well, you'll contribute to a team that by the time you get to the end of it is going to be competing, because that's what my plan is. And I'll get draft pick compensation if I don't move you in that last year. All right? It'll all depend on what's going on. So if you're Ben Cherington, you just kind of shrug. If it's term, you can shrug even bigger, because that could change in the next year or two. You definitely don't move on from him. Because if you were close on the money, and it was more along the lines of Reynolds wanted to still become a free agent when he was 32 or 33, or Reynolds didn't want to ever become a free agent, or wanted player options, or wanted to stick around until he was 35, 36 and never have to worry about free agency, You don't know. Did he want to get out earlier than what the Pirates want to give him? Did he want to get out later than what the Pirates wanted to give him? But if the money was right, term can be fixed because feelings will change about term over the next 3 years. The Pirates might sit there and say, you know what? We're good with that. Bryan Reynolds might be at a different point in his life at that point. So I wouldn't rush out at this point and be like, well, we got to trade him now because he's unhappy. I mean, this isn't the NBA. He's got like 0 rights. And he just shoots himself in the foot if he doesn't play well. He'll be forgotten in 3 years. So, I mean, I know that's a callous thing to say. I'm a big Bryan Reynolds fan. I love watching him go out there and play. I think he's a hell of a ball player. And there's a reason why everybody in Major League Baseball is clamoring for their team to trade for him right now, because there was a hint of he's unhappy and he wants a trade. But if you're the Pirates, if you're Ben Cherington, you're like, all right, that's cute. You want out? Pfft, that's great. You got 3 years, and I don't need to move you. So go out and play, because if you don't play well, you won't get anything when you finally become a free agent. Like, if I'm Ben Cherington, I just kind of shrug and move on, because a lot of things can change in the next couple of years if it was only about term.
Yeah, and the Pirates came out like right after this and just basically said, you know, we like Bryan Reynolds. We like Bryan Reynolds, the player. He's a part of our team. We like what he does for us, and we're looking forward to him having a good year in 2023. So, I mean, what we talked about with like this whole term thing, Chris, is that, like you said, is he saying, you know, do I want to be here for 3 years? Do I want to be here for 10 years? It's all about the years. It's not about him being unhappy and not wanting to be here. John Heyman came out, and then it was later confirmed by Jason Mackey that this would have been the largest contract by money. And this was like total money. It's not like, you know, average annual, you know, value of the contract. Brian Hayes signed for $70 million. So if you do the math in your head, if he's leaning somewhere over that $70 million, so if you're thinking $75 million, $80 million, and actually a fairly decent, you know, average annual value there, it'd be $15 million if it was 75, a little bit over that if it was 80, and you're looking at probably around like 5 years, which is what the Pirates mostly do all the time.
Yeah, they try to get those first 2 years of free agency.
Yeah,
okay?
and maybe have an option year in there.
And I'm going to tell you something right now. If I were a baseball player, like if I had the talent to go out and play baseball for a living, whew, man, wouldn't that be great? But I mean, like if I could do that, okay, and I was a professional baseball player, and I looked at the market, and I looked at how players get paid, and I looked at how guys make so much more money if they can get into their first free agent year while they're still in their late 20s. And I look at the drop-off when you get to your first free agent year when you're in your 30s, okay? And again, Bryan Reynolds' year 31 season, I think I've got that right, would be his free agent year at this point if the Pirates just held on to him. And if the Pirates, let's say, offered a term that ate up the 31 year and the 32 year, just go look at what the average baseball player, unless they are a superstar pitcher like a Justin Verlander or Jacob deGrom, unless, let's say, they had a year like Aaron Judge had, most guys that are floating out there, like let's say like a Mitch Haniger, you know, there's a couple of free agent outfielders that are out there, right? They're like a Jock Peterson. Like there's a few of them out there. If you look at what those guys command, they're not picking up huge money at that point because there's a decline. Like teams evaluate guys that get into their 30s, and the further they get into their 30s as I'm not going to invest a lot of years and dollars into that player. Things change. That's just how the market is. He's more valuable if he gets out sooner. If they want to keep him, he might as well just stick around for a few more years then, right? And have the stability and just be like, I'm a Pirate probably for my entire life. And be happy with that. If they came in somewhere in the middle where he would have had to enter free agency at 33, I get it. Because I'd be like, I don't want to do that, right? I wouldn't want to do that. I would either want to enter it in the next 3 years, right? If that was my option. Worst case, I don't sign this contract. I'm out for my year 31 season. I'd much rather hit free agency then and bet on myself if they were trying to get me into that 33 year. You know what I'm saying? It's just that's how the market has been working for these players for years and years and years about their value. And they start to take a hit in their value when they get to that age. So I can see it. Trust me, if the Pirates did what you're talking about, and if it is about term, as the source said, and it's not really about money, and they're doing what they typically do, and a lot of teams do it, where it's like, I want to eat up the rest of the control that we have plus add 2 years to it. Bryan Reynolds, based upon his age right now and the way that he, like when he arrived in Major League Baseball, that doesn't work for him eating up just the 2 years. It puts him in kind of a no man's land when he would go out into free agency. And that's why he's probably like, no, I'm not doing that. I'd rather just bet on myself, finish out the 3 years, trade me right now. They're going to go, yeah, we don't need to. But worst case, he's out when he's still got a little bit more value if he plays well over the next 3 years.
Yeah, because even, I was talking about like the Pirates' history, even a player like Andrew McCutchen, who we gave an extension to, a 6-year extension, ended up being the 7th year was an option. We ended up picking the option up and then, immediately trading him. But at that point in time, he was 25 years old. I mean, I know it's not Bryan Reynolds' fault that he's going into his 28-year-old season, but it does leave him and it leaves the team in a little bit of a sticky situation because, I mean, there's so many examples out there, Chris, that we bring up all the time. We always bring up the Cincinnati Reds and how they put too much money into Joey Votto. You could also throw in the Milwaukee Brewers, who just basically had to give away, Renfroe for, 3 pitchers to cut some salary because they're giving so much money to Christian Yelich. I'm looking forward to Miguel Cabrera's, farewell tour. Miguel Cabrera is one of the dude's a Hall of Famer, like first ballot Hall of Famer, always an enjoyable player to watch, but look what that contract did to what the Tigers could do. So when people are saying, oh, you know what, just give Reynolds, if he wants 10 years, just give him 10 years and give him a blank check. When you're a team like the Pirates, and this is a system issue, this isn't more of, part of it is an owner issue, but part of it is also a system issue, that if you're a team in that lower revenue, like the Reds, like the Pirates, like the Brewers, can you really have, Joey Votto sitting there due to make $23 million this year? And what did he do for you last year? I think he did good stuff for the game because I thought he was a funny dude. He was out there talking to fans and that was great and everything. But as a team, what is he doing for you? And you're going to pay him $23 million this year. If you don't have that to spread out, I can kind of see, I'm not saying I'm siding along with the Pirates, but I can understand it. I understand Bryan Reynolds, that he's either saying, 3 years or 10 years, maybe 8 years, or trade me so that to a team that might actually give me that extension earlier because they can take that risk. But to me, it's not as big of a deal as everybody thinks it's going to be. And the first name that popped into my head when all of this happened was JT Realmuto. JT Realmuto asked for a trade from the Marlins in 2017. And I'm pretty sure back then, all the Marlins fans, all 5 of them, were probably now JT Realmuto, he's going to tank because he's not happy. And man, this guy really, really doesn't want to be here. The dude made the All-Star team.
Of course he did. He wanted to leave. He wanted to increase his value to a point where he can get out. It's only good for the Pirates if Bryan Reynolds ticked off right now, right? It'll bring incredible focus. I want to acquire him right now for my fantasy baseball team, which, by the way, had JT Realmuto at that time, and I valued him, and I went and grabbed him because I was like, well, he wants out, and so he's going to go hit the crap out of the ball until he gets out. Because he's either going to get a ton of money one day and get to stick his tongue out at his former team, or he's going to make himself so valuable that somebody's going to come knocking on the door and they'll have to take the deal. So that's what his reaction was, and you could predict that. So, look, it as a fan, if you love the player, and I get it. I get that people fall in love with players. And again, I like Bryan Reynolds. He's a hell of a ball player. There's a lot of people in Major League Baseball that would love to have the Pirates just be like, all right, you want to trade? We'll trade him away. They're not going to do that, though. But there's a lot of people who would love him all around the league. So I get it. I get that you get an attachment to him and you want the best for your player, okay, because you like him. But in the end, the Pirates don't need to move him. And it's now in his court. If he's unhappy, he's got to play some great baseball. right? That's how does he stick it to the Pirates? He becomes even better. Okay? He makes himself so valuable that teams start showering Ben Cherington with offers in a pennant race midway through the season or next offseason or whatever. Or he becomes so valuable that in 3 years, when he gets a massive contract, he gets to take a shot at the Pirates from the podium of his new team. But either way, it benefits the Pirates for the next 3 years. And like I said, there's still a possibility, if we're talking term, that maybe things change. Let's see what his health is in a couple of years. Let's see what if the Pirates' opinion changes and they go, you know what? We think you're actually going to play further on in your career. I mean, I'm looking at the free agents right now. And I just want to illustrate this point. The difference between if Reynolds wants to get out earlier than what the Pirates gave him term-wise, and that no man's land of being about 33 years old. Here's a couple of guys very similar in WAR, in wins above replacement, less than 1 between them, that are floating out there that are outfielders right now. You tell me who you'd rather sign to a longer-term deal. I mean, would you give Andrew Benintendi or Joey Gallo? Benintendi's 28, Gallo's 29. Would you be more willing to give them a long-term contract, okay, with a little bit more dollars and a little bit more years at that age? Would you give the exact same offer to, say, let's find one here that's close to them? Adam Duvall, who's 33, AJ Pollock, who's 35. I mean, which ones do you think would be more valuable to your team long term? If you were a general manager and you're playing general manager right now and you're looking at different guys, Michael Conforto or Mitch Haniger? Conforto's 30, Haniger's going to be 33 next year. Okay, both of them basically.
It's always the younger guy, man.
They're basically
always younger guy.
They're basically the same player, but Conforto gets to be, if he's healthy, gets to be out in the same free agent market as Haniger. Conforto's going to get a better deal, and so that's why Reynolds would either want to get out quickly, or would want to be locked in and know what he's going to get and get those extra years. And again, I believe that you're probably dead on. If you take what we're hearing, that it was more term than it was money, and then you look at what the Pirates like to do and eat up those 2 first years of free agency, it puts him in kind of a no man's land in free agency when he finally gets there. So I get why he said, probably not. I don't want to do it this time around. He wants out because if he can get to another team in a trade, maybe they offer him something better and they sign him. Like he wants to go to another team right now because he wants that team to lock him in after he gets there. Okay? So again, that suggests to me that Bryan Reynolds is more about security and probably wanted more years than less because he wants a trade and he wants to get in with another team now. And he isn't in a big rush to sit around for 3 years and test the free agent market when he's going into his 31 year. He'd like to go someplace else, have them fall in love with him, and then sign him through year 36 and be done. That's probably what he wants to do.
You can't blame the guy. I mean, that's where it's like, but it's not something if you're going to be cheering for this baseball team that usually works out in people's favor if they sign the guys into those years. Could Bryan Reynolds be a unicorn and just be this workhorse and, hit consistently from now until when he's 34? He could. The likelihood of that, I mean, just look at the history of baseball. And what likelihood of that happening.
And what teams can absorb it, Craig? Teams that have $200 million payrolls can absorb it. Teams that have $250 million payrolls can absorb those extra years where you gave it to the guy to keep him happy and lock him in, but you accepted the decline. You were like, well, we're going to be kind of overpaying him at the back end. Teams with the budget that the Pirates have, that Bob Nutting gives his general manager, they get crushed. Ben Cherington gives him too many years, Bob Nutting will fire Ben Cherington down the line. All right? So we've talked about this before. Nutting, I'm not excusing him. He should be spending far more money on his team. But Ben Cherington has to work within the construct that is handed down by his boss. This is how much money you get, and this is what I expect. All right? And he really puts himself in a bad position if he gives Bryan Reynolds way too many years, and Reynolds either gets injured or declines, as would be more of the norm than if he just all of a sudden continued to, like, it's more likely he declines in his mid-30s than keeps the same level or even gets better, right? That's the rarity in baseball. So he's got to say to himself, oh man, unless he's a unicorn, I'm really kind of shooting myself in the foot for my job and my team construction if I give him too many years. So I mean, I get it. I get why. Really, I truly understand this if it's term. Term makes all the sense in the world here why they couldn't get a deal done. Term makes all the sense in the world why Reynolds would want to trade. Okay? Because money, he probably sits there and he goes to himself, well, I'll just keep playing better, and then maybe they'll offer me more money. Term probably, maybe that doesn't move. Maybe that's his mindset. All I know here is this. I get the Pirates' reasoning of not giving him too long of a deal based upon the money restrictions that are placed on the general manager by the owner. You could be mad at Nutting for it, fine. I'm not going to tell you can't be mad at him. You should be mad at him. He doesn't spend enough money, right? He's a cheap owner, okay? But Ben Cherington still has to find a way to put a team together, and then he wants that team to continuously have success, all right? And that's why he can't do this. So, whatever. In the end, they have him for 3 years, right? So this is not a panic thing, and that's why I was shocked by the amount of panic that people had when they heard about this.
And I was shocked by the amount of panic I had. And like I said, it might have just been that, waking up from a nap and not knowing what time it was. And that's the first thing you read. Because, I mean, Chris, we had Andrew Filipponi on from The Fan not too long ago. We discussed a Bryan Reynolds trade. We discussed that it possibly may make sense to move him this offseason and not affect the timeline. We had talked about that even if he doesn't get traded, in this offseason, the likelihood of him getting traded, especially if the Pirates have a player that hopefully steps up and they can backfill, once Bryan Reynolds is gone, then that kind of goes up, because that's the other thing, with the Pirates. And I know it's a different ownership and whatever it may be, but it's usually when a guy has, 2 years, 1 year control left, and the Pirates are like, you know what, we're not going to get an extension worked out, so we're going to move on from you. But they at least hopefully will have that position solved.
But I don't get the reason to want to trade. See, here's the thing. Like, I don't get that. You have 3 years of control, right? So that means you have 3 years right now where you either identify somebody in your own system or acquire that person either through a trade in the minor leagues or you draft and you develop. In 3 years, you can't find something that replaces him when the contract runs out.
Then that's your fault.
Blood.
Then that's their fault.
That's the Pirates' fault there. I mean, and we talk about it all the time. Based upon the budget, you have to operate like the A's and the Tampa Bay Rays. Well, that's what they would do. They'd be like, all right, we got this guy for 3 years. Look what they did to Blake Snell. I mean, let's talk about how other teams do things. There's a rule in baseball before you even get to arbitration where a team can actually, no matter how well you do that season, can offer you less than what you made the year before. When you're that early on before you even get to your arbitration years, they can decrease your salary. The Rays did that to Blake Snell while he was pitching his arm off for them, right? He's up for awards all the time, and they're lowering his salary. Why? Because that's the construct of their team. You may hate it, but that's what they're allowed to do under the collective bargaining agreement. And then what do? Eventually, when the right deal comes along, they move them. But they never felt any pressure to do it because they're down there developing the next pitcher that comes up. And if you're going to operate under this budget, that's the kind of team you have to be. So I don't understand we got to trade him to get something for him. You don't need to get anything for him. You got 3 years of him. In 3 years, he could break his leg out there too. I mean, here's the thing. Have this sobering thought get through your head. You can have all the control of the world on a guy, and he crashes into the wall and screws up his rotator cuff, and he never plays baseball again. He could get a concussion sliding into second base and still have 4 years left on his contract. All right? Justin Morneau. Remember him? He was a hell of a ball player. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. Gets a concussion, the bad turn of events, terrible luck, and he's gone. Here, at least, the Pirates know you get 3 years of Bryan Reynolds trying his heart out, okay? And you just have to figure out who takes over in year 4 of that equation. Build your team and move on. It shouldn't have any effect whatsoever on your window, okay? It really shouldn't at this point. You should just be like, all right, it is what it is. But we know we got 3 years, unless, of course, he hurts himself, okay? Yeah. But, I mean, you're not locked into him for 6. So you have plenty of time to figure out what happens after those 3 years are over.
Yeah, so it's really not, I mean, after all of this, Number one, it's not like Bryan Reynolds changed his mind. He was interviewed in October and the beginning of November and was saying, he wanted to be a part of this team. He hopes it was the plan for him to be longer. He liked the youth within this organization. And then the Pirates actually come out and say, we're going to actually put our foot down and try to get better in 2023. They actually put a number out there. They've been saying they've wanted to get better this entire time, but they put a number to it. They go out and get, G-Man Choi. They go out and get Carlos Santana. And they're starting to make these moves and hoping to improve the team. And then all of a sudden, Bryan Reynolds wakes up one morning and goes, I was just on 200 lost teams in a row. I'm really unhappy. Please trade me. No, that didn't happen. But that's like one of the big narratives that's out there, and it's getting pushed by people that are bigger than Chris Lanuti, Craig Toth, and Gary Morgan. So that's what's getting all the noise. But that's not what's happening. That's not what happened here whatsoever.
That's why podcasts like Bucs in the Basement exist, because we can just be honest. We can just sit in a 9-foot homemade oak bar and just talk about the team. And that's what's honestly going on here. All right? I mean, and Gary has a really good source. I'm not burning his source. It'll cause a lot of trouble. Okay? But trust me, it's term. Based upon what Craig just explained to me before we started this podcast, it's term. It's not money. Okay? And we just explain why, if that's true, you kind of get both sides of the story, and you shouldn't really panic about it. You just sit back and think. I mean, think about it this way. If Bryan Reynolds didn't exist and Ben Cherington just went out and picked up an outfielder on a 3-year contract for the money that Bryan Reynolds is going to get, and he had the skill level of Bryan Reynolds, you'd be hitting high fives.
Yeah.
So why do you got to trade him? Just why do you got to trade him? I think that's just a silly knee-jerk reaction, and it's meant to sell papers and radio ad time and get more tweets, okay? You don't need to do anything with them. We got about 5 minutes left, and I know the Rule 5 draft is happening here at the winter meetings, and the Pirates have cleared a little bit of room. As of now, they got one spot open on the 40-man roster. Do you have somebody that you think they're going to go grab?
I mean, if he's there, Eric Miller is hands down the guy that I would grab.
Tell me who he is. What does he play? I know nothing about him.
Yeah, 6'5", 240-pound left-hander in the Phillies minor league system.
Pitcher?
Pitcher.
Starting pitcher or relief pitcher?
He is a starter / reliever. He's been used kind of as a reliever and a starter these past couple years. But, I mean, with everybody getting built back up from COVID, I don't really look too much into that. The guy's seen more as a starter.
But you could hide him in the pen to keep him on your roster for the year, and he could contribute. And think of all the crappy pitchers that we have in this bullpen over the last couple of years. You could hide a pitcher easily in the bullpen. Let him play 162, and then you got control of him going forward because you grabbed them in the Rule 5 draft. So yeah, I mean, I think pitcher makes an awful lot of sense, and likely he's in the bullpen unless they decide they want to build him up and there's a spot inside the rotation. But that makes the most. Rule 5 drafts to me are always so interesting when somebody grabs like a position player and you're like, do you really think that guy's gonna contribute to your team on the field? Like, you can hide pitchers so much easier on your team to get control of a guy that you think you can develop. So that makes an awful lot of sense.
Yeah, and if he's not available, I'd also be looking at Thad Ward, big right-handed pitcher in the Boston Red Sox system, reached as high as AA this past year, 2.43 ERA, 1.260 WHIP. Starter. He's looking, the same. Doesn't have a ton of innings, under his belt. So, and that's something else you look. But he's also 25 years old. So it's just like you can stick him in the bullpen. If he works, he works. If not, I mean, that's the thing about the Rule 5 draft. A lot of these players just get returned anyway.
Right.
So it's just, looking to see almost, where you can kind of hide a guy and buy your way into a prospect. Somebody who was a good prospect for another team that may have fallen out of favor, somebody that's performed well, maybe flew under the radar a little bit, and seeing if you can make him stick long enough so that he can become your prospect, still have, some upside to him and move forward with that. And that's where, like, we got to mention this one more time. Cody Bolton, Tanaj Thomas, those are my two big guys that I feel that the Pirates could potentially lose because they are pitchers and because they do have that upside to them. And so that's where we're kind of going, Chris. And then also, by the time you listen to this, we'll know where the Pirates are picking. It's a lottery, happens at 8:30 on Tuesday night. They have like a 16.5% chance to get the number 1 pick. And the lowest they could pick is number 9. They're still in the top 10. So if you're getting a top 10 pick, I mean, unless it's like a slam dunk, Ken Griffey Jr., somebody like that at number 1, then you're going to get a decent player no matter what. So, but people are going to be paying attention to that.
Yeah, you know what? I think that I felt really good about the amateur scouting to date. I mean, not everything is working out perfectly. I thought it was really interesting. I was joking with you that Nick Gonzalez slipped down a list of second base prospects to look at. We were looking at our fantasy baseball league, and I remember I traded him to you off my team like a couple years ago, and you were so excited, you wanted him so badly. And now he's not even the best Pittsburgh Pirates second baseman in the system, according to Scott White on CBS. Which I thought was just, I couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, I remember what you gave up for him too, and it was spectacular. So I mean, again, you need to bring in some help on that team. You really do. You gotta
somebody who is not a Pirates fan and will stop me from picking up every single Pirates prospect.
You see, you can't take a step back. You fall in love with Pirates players. This is why you reacted so badly to the Bryan Reynolds thing at the beginning, right? Because you didn't look at the big picture of the whole thing. But I put it in perspective for you, okay? No matter what happens, if you were to get a player of Bryan Reynolds' caliber right now on a 3-year deal for the money that you owe him from now until the end of that deal, you'd be like, yeah! So you don't need to move him. You honestly don't. You get a draft pick, too. If you never move him, you get a draft pick at the end. You got 3 years to figure out what you put in there next time. I mean, if I'm Ben Cherington, I shrug and move on. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
And he said it's not going to affect their decision making, and I really didn't think it is.
What's he going to do? He's going to play bad on purpose? He'll never make any money again. He'll be playing in Japan. So I mean, in the Korean baseball league if he plays bad. So I mean,
and if Ben Cherington screws this up, then he's fired, and he goes out and signs a relief pitcher, which he said he was going to do anyway. So he's moving along with the winter meetings.
He's moving on.
Pirates fan.
I'd move on too. I'm heartless. I love my general managers to be heartless. I'm a heartless general manager. Okay, I'm a heartless guy when it comes to that kind of thing. You have to be. You really do. You're building a team. You got a 40-man roster and several levels of minor leagues and millions of dollars going back and forth. You just got to kind of go, well, this is what I can offer you. You don't want to take it? I got you for 3 years. I get it, man. I totally get it. I know it's not what everybody wants to hear, but trust me, I highly doubt Bryan Reynolds is getting moved. Unless it's a knock your socks off offer. You are not getting rid of him at a discount to anybody. If you trade him, you're getting something back that makes perfect sense for him.